The White Goddess, a historical grammar of poetic myth, is a book-length essay by English writer Robert Graves on the nature of poetic myth-making. The book was first published in 1948 and is based on earlier articles. The White Goddess provides a distinctively unique and individualistic approach to mythology research. Graves claims the presence of a European deity, the White Goddess of birth, love, and death, who is inspired and portrayed by the phases of the moon and lays behind the features of numerous European and pagan deities. The book is inspired by the mythology and poetry of Wales and Ireland, as well as the mythology and poetry of the rest of Western Europe and the ancient Middle East. Graves argues for the worship of a single goddess under numerous names, a theory that became known as matriarchal religion. The Golden Bough, first edition published 1890, an early anthropological study by Sir James George Fraser, is the starting point for much of Graves' argument, and Graves thought in part that his book made explicit what Fraser only hinted at. Graves concluded, in the second and expanded edition, that the male-dominant monotheistic god of Judaism and its successors were the cause of the White Goddess's downfall, and thus the source of much of the modern world's woe. He describes woman as occupying a higher echelon than mere poet, that of the muse herself. He adds, this is not to say that a woman should refrain from writing poems, only that she should write as a woman, not as an honorary man. Some of Graves' ideas came from poetic inspiration and a process he called analeptic thinking, which he used to describe sending one's thoughts back in time and obtaining feelings. Graves' notion was also influenced by visual iconography. Graves developed iconotropy, a mechanism for interpreting pictures. It is necessary to reduce speech into its original visuals and rhythms, and then combine them on numerous simultaneous levels of cognition to apply this approach. Using this strategy, Graves deciphered a woodcut of the Judgment of Paris as representing a single triple goddess rather than the images conventional Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Graves contends that a single goddess has been worshipped under various names, drawing on European and pagan mythology, ancient cult practices, and other literary sources. She is a multidimensional divinity who oversees birth, life, and death as the maiden, mother, and crone. Graves contends that all real poetry invokes the goddess as muse. Graves was gripped by a revelation while researching material for another novel set in ancient times, The Golden Fleece, of what he felt to be the fundamental form and substance of all ancient poetry and, therefore, of all real poetry to current times. This concept was elaborated, with recondite references to Celtic, Northern European, and Mediterranean mythology in prehistory, to form the basis for the White Goddess, his most prominent and contentious work of critique. Until the end of the Bronze Age, around 1000 BC, a single religion ruled most of the world, from northern India to Britain, that is, in places where the Indo-European language had been entrenched. This religion was based on the worship of the three-part, or tripartite, goddess, who was most usually connected with the moon due to her variable nature. Her phases were maiden, wife and mother, and crone. The global goddess presided over all birth, development, and death in these three guises. Two gods attended the goddess, the god of the spring, or waxing year, who was ritually slain at midsummer and supplanted by his rival, the god of the waning year, who ruled until the winter solstice. At that time, the god of the waxing year was resurrected through the power of the goddess, and the cycle began once more. This cosmic story was repeated in human society and individual human lives, and it was the task of the true poet to celebrate this mystery. The poet succeeded only to the extent that he accepted the power of the goddess and was granted her inspiration. Graves argued that this goddess worship, which served as the foundation for all real property, was violently interrupted and subsequently replaced by invaders from the Middle East who worshipped a superior male god and seized the goddess's rightful role. This process unfolded in phases, beginning with the introduction of the ancient Greek pantheon of gods controlled by Zeus and concluding with the expansion of patriarchal Christianity over Europe. Worship of the goddess, and hence the practice of real poetry, were practically prohibited. Where it lasted, it did so in secret, as practiced by the Welsh bards, or as a debased and only half-true recollection. Graves claimed that modern poets continue to exist and are inspired by the white goddess as a muse, but they do so mostly subconsciously and frequently in violation of accepted social and critical standards. The white goddess has several references to historical, anthropological, and mythical research, including Sir James Fraser's The Golden Bough. Graves contributed his own interpretations of traditions ranging from the obscure, such as the Old Welsh poetry, the Battle of the Trees, to the familiar, such as the Book of Revelation from the Bible, to Fraser's insightful examination of the reality's underlying stories. Graves claims that all of these give evidence to support his argument. Graves' arguments are one of the reasons the white goddess has been so divisive since its release. Graves is inverting or opposing much established research by positing a single, unifying goddess worship that stretched across Indo-European society. His interpretation of Greek myths in support of his thesis has been criticized as eccentric at best and plain incorrect at worst. A second point of contention in The White Goddess was Graves' presentation of his work as a literal and authentic depiction of the continuous source of real poetry, rather than as a historical or analytical study. Graves does not use the triple goddess metaphorically; she is a real divinity. Worshipped prior to the arrival of patriarchal invaders, she inspired poets. Now recognized only faintly and by random inspiration, she is the sole genuine muse of true poems in the current world. Many people in the current world find such a view absurd, yet that is the stance that Graves defended powerfully and learnedly in The White Goddess and maintained throughout his poetry career. The White Goddess therefore enters the ranks of English literary masterpieces that cannot be adequately categorized. It is an achievement that, like William Butler Yeats' A Vision, and James Joyce's Finnegan's Wake, 1939, has aroused acclaim, criticism, and ongoing controversy among its readers. Graves also claims that the names of the Ogham letters in the Gaelic alphabet used in Gaelic Ireland and Britain contained a calendar containing the key to an ancient liturgy involving the human sacrifice of a sacred king, and that these letter names concealed lines of ancient Greek hexameter describing the goddess. Graves postulated a fictional Gallic tree deity, Druantia, in The White Goddess, who has gained some popularity among current neo-pagans. As seen in the evergreen boughs, Druantia is an archetype of the Eternal Mother. Her given name is said to be derived from the Celtic term for oak trees. Queen of the Druids is her title. She is a fertility goddess for both plants and people, governing over sexual activity and desire. She also governs tree protection, wisdom, and creativity. The White Goddess has been seen as a poetic work in which Graves gives his concept of man's subjugation to women in love, anthropological grandeur, and mythologizes all women in general, and some of Graves' lovers in particular, into a three-faced moon goddess image. Some neo-pagans have been bemused and upset by the scholarly criticism that the White Goddess has received in recent years, while others have appreciated its poetic insight but never accepted it as a work of historical veracity. Likewise, a few scholars find some value in Graves' ideas, believing his theories and conclusions, outlandish as they seem to his contemporaries, or may appear to us, were the result of careful observation.